everyone. My name is Becca Willie with Radon Express. I am the affiliate chair here at Three Rivers Association of Realtors. The Affiliates Committee is excited to bring you a new take this year on our Food for Thought series. We're going to be starting Food for Thought on demand, where we pre-record videos for you that you can check out at any time. Our first on-demand video is about what you need to know about Joliet's single-family rental inspection program. We have a rock star panel here with us today. First, we have Matt Persichetti, Realtor with Oakleaf Realty and Government Affairs Committee Chair. We also have Gabe Friend, the Interim Director of the City of Joliet's Neighborhood Services Division. And last but certainly not least, we have Nora Grunberg, Illinois Realtors Government Affairs Director. Nora, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. We're very excited to be sitting with Gabe Friend. As most of you probably know, over the past several months, we have been working with the City of Joliet to make sure that the single-family rental inspection program, should it be passed, and it was as unburdensome for property owners in Joliet as possible. We've been getting a lot of feedback from members concerned about what's coming next. What should they expect? So we're really pleased to be here with Gabe today so that he can explain how Joliet Neighborhood Services Division will be rolling out this program. And to guide our conversation today, we have Matt Persichetti, our Government Affairs Committee Chair, and my dog barking. I'm going to go on mute. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you for all your work that you've done. Gabe, thank you very much for being here today. You have been a true asset and a voice of reason for years with the city, and we always appreciate your input. So I'm just going to get right into it. We've reached out to our members to ask them what questions they have of this new program, and we got a bunch of them. So let's get to it. The first one is, when does the new program begin?
So the ordinance amendment was passed on October 4th, and it does, immediately change the requirements as far as when we anticipate getting to the first inspections. I anticipate that in December of this year, so a little more than a month from now, probably 6 weeks, we will start sending out the first notices for inspection. And we plan to do those inspections starting in January of 2023. So starting in 2023, we'll start working through the inspection process. And then there is a requirement that all owners need to register. And that registration is supposed to happen within 90 days of passing the ordinance. Which kind of corresponds with the end of this year. Maybe I think January 2nd might be the 90-day mark. We are working on that and the same target. My goal is that at the beginning of November or December, we will be sending out a information to each owner and a bill necessarily, along with a registration form that needs to be completed and returned to us by the end of the year.
Okay, so that actually got to the fourth question we had is, how will it be communicated to the property owners and or the tenants? So it's going to be by mail to the owners?
We will send out an invoice, especially for this first round, because it's new and nobody has had this requirement before. So the owner registration requirement is an annual requirement, and but because it's the first time, we're going to send out an invoice to each of the people that we have record of. There may be people that have properties that we are unaware of. They are required to register by the end of the year. But the invoices will go out to all those that we have record of. If there are other people, we do plan to put some of that information on our website and Facebook to try to communicate that out to the public. And there may be some other communication that comes out. We haven't nailed down what all of that may be. We've talked about maybe an insert in water bills. Or in the past, we've done different newsletters from the city. If we do those in the next 90 days, we will put that information in the newsletter as well to try to communicate out these changes.
Okay. So you're going to send the invoice. What is it, the amount that the property owners are going to pay annually?
So there's a $100 fee for the property owners to get registered. They will be required to supply the information of each rental unit that they have on that registration form, but it's just a $100 fee per owner. So whether you own one or 100, it's the same $100.
Okay, excellent. So that answers the question, do property owners need new certification annually? That's correct, that they do,
Yes.
right? And what is the inspection checklist?
So when we get to the inspection process there, what we're inspecting for is mainly the International Property Maintenance Code. And although we do inspect for compliance with all of the adopted codes and ordinances of the city of Joliet. So, there might be property ordinances related to parking and the grass, or exterior issues at your rental property. There might be, plumbing, Illinois State Plumbing Code, things that we may find. So when we do our inspection, it is for all of the codes and ordinances adopted by the city of Joliet, with the main emphasis on the International Property Maintenance Code.
Okay, well, I'm going to hop right to the last question we had on there then. So will all currently existing single-family rental properties be required to be brought to the current code?
No. When and that is one of the differences between what my division, the Neighborhood Services Division, does and the building department. We are inspecting existing buildings. So if you did a permit project, you would go through the building department, and it would have to come, whatever the project would have to be done to the current codes. We inspect existing buildings, and so it's not going to have to come up with current code. There are a few exceptions where we do require people to make an improvement to code, and those would be life safety issues. So the things that I see regarding that, a lot of times it's to do with either egress windows or stairs. At a single family home, I wouldn't anticipate there would be any fire rating issues, but it would be something related to life safety, where we might require you to upgrade something to code that is deficient. But in general, you're an existing building, whatever was installed and built and remodeled, it's applicable to the code at the time that it was built and remodeled. So we would not require you to upgrade most of those items to current code.
Okay, now you had mentioned stairs. Give me an example. What do you mean by stairs? Are you talking handrails?
So what I see in stairs, and I anticipate a little bit more of these issues probably in older neighborhoods. What I see when we come to stairs are the code going back as far as we have it. I mean, we have it from the 1976 BOCA actually on our shelf, and the code may have changed as far as heights and depths of the stairs, the height of the riser or the depth of the tread. But one thing that's always been there is it has to be consistent. So the rises have to be equal. And what we find on occasion is that stairs have been replaced over time, and you might have a 3-inch rise on the first riser. The rest of them are all 7, and and it's not equal and consistent. So I find that when we're doing existing building inspections, that somebody did some work and it wasn't done to code when they did it, and it's not to code, and because of the trip hazard related to stairs, we would require you to correct that. Yes, we the same thing with guardrails specifically, and handrails. We have a little bit of leniency with handrails because the codes have changed. So if you have handrails compliant with when that was built, we're okay with that. Guardrails, interestingly, the existing building code is more lenient than, and our property maintenance code is adopted. Guardrails have to be 30 inches minimum. The current codes are 36 inches minimum. So again, we're going to go with the existing code on that.
Okay. How often will the properties be inspected? Is it once a year, between tenant turnover? What's the schedule?
And this is, something where I would encourage property owners, because this is regulation on your property, I would encourage them to read the ordinance, because there is basically a category. You're going to get put into a category, and that's going to determine your inspection cycle. So we will issue you a certificate of inspection when it has passed inspection. That certificate can be good for 6 months, 1 year, a 2-year term, 4-year term, or a 6-year term. So it's somewhat complex. And there are criteria then that determine how you are placed into a category and how you move from one category to another.
And that criteria has got to be just structure specific, I imagine, right?
So the criteria involves 2 things. It's the number of violations and the type of violations that are found at your building. So if there are 5 or fewer violations when we do your inspection, that's how you qualify for the higher tiers. But then the second criteria is time frame for compliance. So it essentially, we need it brought into compliance quickly. And so if you have 5 or fewer violations that are corrected within 45 days, then you can qualify for those higher tiers. If it's between 45 days and 90 days, then you're going to end up in lower tiers. And basically then, if violations are not corrected within 90 days, which is a 3-month time frame, if they're not corrected in that time frame, then you're going to get 6 month or 1 year shorter time frames on the inspection cycles.
Okay, so everyone that's going to see this is going to be a good landlord. So those really bad ones, yes, we can forget them. But I'm curious if you're seeing like 5 violations. What if it's a 3-bedroom house and it's missing 3 smoke detectors? Is that 3 violations or is that 1?
That is 3 violations. The criteria is 5 or fewer violations that are non-life safety, and smoke detectors is one of those emergency violations.
That's what came to mind. I'm just wondering, like, if there's a repetitive, maybe you got non-grounded outlets, something.
Yeah,
like that.
if you have ungrounded outlets or problems like that are through the whole home, a lot of times we will write that up once. We're not going to go through, and generally we're not writing it up in your bedroom, in your living room, and where else you might find that.
Okay. How will the housing providers know their inspection schedule?
So the same thing with our, communication, that we will send notice to the owner that their property is up for inspection. And our notice will give them 30 to 45 days that we are scheduling an inspection and we're planning to come out on this date. So we will send you a letter directly as an owner that your property is up for inspection and we've scheduled it for a date and time.
Okay. Will the city issue any warnings?
That's yes. I I want to be cautious here because I think we've always worked with people. I do think that there's an importance being put on this issue, especially with the registration part. You know, on the upfront, this is a new ordinance, and I know that one of the important things to management is that we get everyone registered so that we have this complete listing. I can't answer with certainty that we will issue warnings on that. I think that's always been our practice, would be to, you know, send you a notice that we need this in compliance, and if not, then further legal issues may ensue.
Okay. How quickly can a reinspection be scheduled?
So the same thing with our inspection notices. When we set up our initial inspection, we give you 30 to 45 days. If we note violations, we generally do the same thing. We'll come back, we send out a letter to you that says that we've found some issues, see the attached violation list, and we schedule to come back within 30 to 45 days. So generally we're giving you 30 days notice we're coming to your property, and then we start with 30 days to come back and check on all the violations. With the exception of those life safety issues, you know, smoke detectors, we come back 7 days later. So
7 days. Okay. So because, you know, in theory, as this rolls out, everyone gets registered. Some people get a year, some people get 2 years, some get 6. Let's say we've got a 6-year property, owner sells it. The new owner just has to register, correct? It does not, there is no inspection at turnover, correct?
correct. So the certificate that you'll receive is transferable.
Okay.
Provided that the new owner registers. You know, if they don't, then it's, you know, the ordinance basically says that it's up to the Director of Neighborhood Services whether or not they'll allow the transfer.
Okay, so I'm going to read this question, but I think you may have already answered. What is the recourse for housing providers and tenants if inspections hold off a tenant turnover or delay a move-in if the city cannot get there in a timely manner?
So if it is a city issue, there will not be any recourse. You are at your freedom, I want to say, to occupy that and rent that out. Especially going, you know, between tenants. In rare circumstances, and like you said, I don't think that'll be our audience. If there were major issues at a property, we would not allow the occupancy until we got things corrected. But if you're changing from one tenant to the next, you know, that is not something that we're going to hold up occupancy on if it was occupied prior, even if there's some open violations that need to be addressed, provided they're not something that would prevent, you know, they would be egregious and something that would disallow occupancy on our end.
Okay.
You can occupy it even while, you know, our inspection is not set for 3 more weeks. So.
Okay. How will the city separate a tenant issue and a property issue? That question is posed because there's a lot of concern regarding policing and tenant issues versus an actual property health, safety, compliance issue.
So for our purposes, you know, we inspect the property, and we are, that's what Neighborhood Services does. There is correlation in the ordinance regarding conduct of tenants or guests of tenants on the property. Those issues are all handled by the police department. And I know there's concern about this issue, and I understand that. I don't recall having very many instances whatsoever of the police getting involved and letting us know that there were problems based on a tenant's actions. And I don't believe that Neighborhood Services has taken any action against an owner based on tenant action. I do think that it is in there that basically, you know, should that circumstance happen, the police department will reach out to the owner, require a management plan be submitted, and then followed. If it wasn't followed, there could be adverse actions such as revocation of the certificate by neighborhood services. That has not happened, although, you know, with increased scrutiny here, I can't say that it won't. So again, I think it's a good idea to understand the ordinance. So.
Okay, based on what you've said so far, one of our big fears was holding up turnover. So this question may not, it sounds like you're really going to do your best to not do that. But if an item is weather dependent, you know, exterior paint peeling, anything, will the weather delay or impede any type of occupancy?
No, you know, I do need violations addressed when they're brought to your attention. I need violations addressed when they're brought to the homeowner's attention. However, I understand, you know, you're probably not painting in the months of December, January, February, March, depends on the weather. So there's a couple of different ways that we've handled that and we can handle it. One is to basically set our reinspection without penalty out for springtime. A second way, I have a building right now that's has that exact issue where it needs substantial painting. And that's one of the only issues. So we talked about with the owner that we would give her a 6-month provisional certificate where we would allow her basically just continue for 6 months. We're going to come back in 6 months and start then. And again, I wouldn't want to penalize you based on your certificate length at that point. I'm trying to work with you to get done what it is that needs done, you know. So there's a couple different ways. Either we can extend our reinspection date to work with weather-related issues, or we could issue provisional certificates to grant you that time you need.
Okay. What if you're renting to immediate family members? Do you have to be enrolled in the program if that's the case?
So the ordinance says that if the residence is occupied by anyone other than the owner of the building, that it is qualified as a rental and subject to the program.
Okay. So what that leads to what actually qualifies as a single family rental? You know, you've got a non-owner occupied, or you know, a homeowner renting out their basement or renting out a single bedroom, you know, Airbnbs. How do we handle those?
So I think the primary trigger is if the owner does not reside at the residence, then it's subject to this program. So that is bringing in a number of units, including single families is obviously the biggest population of non-owner occupied rentals would be single family rentals, but it does cover things like condos. So there are, you know, some condo associations you might not be able to rent it out, but there are a number of condo associations in town that do allow rentals of those units. Even though it's not a single family home, it's a residential unit that's occupied, that's, you know, it's the ones that are being rented are occupied by someone other than the owner. So those condos are going to come into the program with this. The previously a 2-unit building where the owner lived in one unit and rented out only 1 unit, those were exempt. Those are now the rental unit portion of that property is now subject to the program as well. So it's any unit where the owner doesn't reside. If the owner is, you know, renting a room out in a basement, but they live in the home, that would not be subject to the program because the owner resides in the property. If that basement on a single family home probably should not be a separate living unit, you know, that might be a zoning issue. But I want to hit on Airbnbs too, because you're asking. So those again, what I'm seeing is most of them are not occupied by the owner. They're being rented out. Short-term rentals such as Airbnb or VRBO, whatever the platform might be, are subject to this program. And it actually says even if the owner resides in the home, because we have had a couple of houses in town where the owner resides in the home, but they will rent it out on a short-term basis. They leave They rent out their home, and we do inspect those. We do require an inspection on those premises and, the issuance of a certificate.
Okay. Now, nobody watching this is going to need to know or pay it, but what are the fines?
So I know they kind of reiterated the fine structure with the amendment, but our fine structure for the city of Joliet, if you are not in compliance with any ordinance, is a minimum of $150 fine and a maximum of $750. Staff does not issue those fines. So basically, if a fine would get issued at an administrative hearing, we would again give you a summons to appear at an administrative hearing for a code violation. We would make a recommendation to the hearing officer, but it's an informal setting, and you are allowed to present hearsay evidence and pictures on your phone, anything that you can come up with, or I had a medical reason or emergency or a family issue, and the hearing officer will take that into consideration before making his decision of whether to fine and what the fine would be.
Who are the hearing officers? Is it council? Who is it?
So we have a local attorney. I believe he has a certificate to be a hearing officer, and he is our hearing officer for the city.
Okay, excellent. And I think our last question for today, Gabe, unless Nora or Becca has any based on what we discussed, how has the city of Joliet communicated the Citizen View app to make observations and or complaints about the properties? I think that is a wonderful thing that you have, and I think 1% of the population knows that it exists.
Yes, I agree. I think it's a good communication tool, again, for residents to communicate with the city about issues they're having that might be city related. And we had a little bit better engagement plan with the prior program. We've been using the ViewWorks Citizen Request app since, I believe, April of 2021. So we have somewhat gone to the neighborhood meetings, and that's probably our biggest place where we push that, and it's not been nearly pushed as much as the prior system. But I think that's our primary engagement. It's on our website. It might even pop up on occasion on our Facebook page, the ViewWorks Citizen Request app. But I know, when I've met with like the Landlords Association or other community meetings, I usually try to put in our plug. I'm glad you have this question here. Because again, I think it's a good communication tool. So it's an app. You can go on your phone, download the app, and submit any issue, whether it's a pothole or a property issue, to the city. It gets kind of routed to the right department then, and we are able to respond. And it's actually probably the quickest way to get the information to the right person by using that app.
For sure. So have you ever put it with the water bill? The knowledge that app exists? If not, that
I don't know whether it has been pushed out there with water bills, but that's not a bad idea, Matt.
I think it's a great idea, and seeing as probably the higher percentage of water bill payers are the tenants, not the landlord. That's who needs to see these, is the tenants. So, Gabe, that's all the questions I have for you. Nora, Becca, anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Gabe. And, we are happy to continue working with the city to make sure that our members, that, buyers, sellers, renters, property owners, housing providers are all aware of this program. We believe that, the scope of the undertaking of this will certainly, keep everyone on their toes. So we want to make sure that we're working with the city, that we're monitoring the situation, providing our members with the best, most accurate information. And, just as a reminder to our members, this single family rental program is rolled into the already existing program. So a lot of their questions could be answered by going to the City of Joliet's page and looking at the already existing ordinance. It's you know, it's kind of the same as it's always been with this added dimension. So, but we want to make that information accessible. So members, please keep your eyes out. We'll be sending out more information, keeping you up to date with what's going on and making sure that if you have any questions, we get them answered quickly and accurately. So thank you so much. And thanks for putting this on, Becca.
Could I make just a couple comments to try to head off a couple of things? I know we talked a little bit about, you know, when to expect things. What I didn't get to say is I think we're going to try to start scheduling inspections in January. However, we are looking at a substantial number of properties. So if you do not get an inspection notice from us, then we're not looking for you, especially if you've been registered. We have good contact information from you. I do not anticipate getting to all of these homes next year. So, you know, don't, as an owner of property, I wouldn't, you know, get concerned with that. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, Nora and Matt, you know, I appreciate working with you guys. Thank you for the opportunity to get this information to your clientele, and I value you guys as a community asset here. And we've had a good relationship, and I want to maintain that going forward. I try to be accessible. If people need to reach me, absolutely feel free. And then you also just mentioned, you know, getting to our website. We do have some information on there on it's Joliet.gov. If you search through the departments, we're in the community development department and we're the neighborhood services division. There's a button on there for the rental inspection program. It's got our ordinance. It's got the rental registration form. It has a friendly fax flyer that kind of gives a little bit of information about what we might like to see at our inspections. And then it also has a landlord checklist for you to go to your building prior to us arriving and try to make sure those items are addressed. So thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank so much, Gabe.
Thank you guys so much for coming on here today. I know that this is has been and still is a hot button issue with a lot of our membership, almost probably all of our membership. And I really appreciate the three of you coming and offering clarity to this, because I know that everyone is really looking for these answers. So Gabe, Matt, Nora, thank you guys so much for being with us today. We really appreciate all of you.